All right, so I want to talk about fake reviews and my moral quandary with buying fake reviews, and some of the chaos and thoughts here that I have um, behind this subject. And I just want to say up front, I'm not advocating anybody buy fake reviews. I obviously think it's an awful idea. I think it's an awful thing to do. I think it's stupid generally, but I do have some thoughts on buying fake reviews and the current environment in SEO and in local SEO more specifically. And I just got back from kids' soccer this morning, and I've literally been writing for like 4 hours about this. So my brain may be a little sludgy. So I might be looking at some notes or stuff while I talk about this, but I want to make sure I kind of get it right. So I would say just starting out, right? I think the current landscape. Well, this all starts from a tweet that I got sent multiple times yesterday from somebody who is relatively popular or known on Twitter about buying fake reviews. And basically, they said Google doesn't care where your reviews come from. They had purchased 100 fake reviews from India. It's been over a year. They sent them to a operating partner, right? These reviews went to somebody who they operate or work with, and they've had no issues at all with that affecting their rank negatively. And it's assumed it's probably been a very positive thing for their business, except for the few 1-star reviews that their competitors have given them, likely because they know it's all fake and they're, pissed, which is understandable. But so, with that being said, I think, I would say, just to start out here, that I don't condone this. I don't condone buying fake reviews, but I worry that in the landscape where Google isn't cracking down on them and they become more and more normalized and people like this talk about doing it, then it starts to go from black hat to gray hat to something you have to do just to keep up, right? That's my ultimate concern here. And I kind of want to talk about that and where I think this is all going and what I think should be done or whatever. I don't know what could be done, but just my thoughts here. Like I said, I'm sludgy. So, yeah, so let me start somewhere where I think this is kind of important and interesting. My first quandary here is the difference between reviews and backlinks. Okay. And I think what's really interesting is that at the beginning of all this years ago, backlinks were the black hat, right? You weren't supposed to buy backlinks. That was the black hat, right? And so that kind of went its direction, right? Like no one was buying them, and then some people were buying them and creating them, and then more people and then more people, and now it's like basically just part of the game, right? Like most people are buying links, backlinks. And at first you might say, "Oh, well, reviews are different, right?" Because it's like a person telling you that like they want to use a business and stuff. But what I would say is what's funny to me is most people who are buying reviews aren't doing it because they care about what somebody is saying in a review, right? They're not trying to get a product or service recommendation purchase from somebody so they can use that text as a way to convince more people to do business, right? It's not going on a commercial, right? They're not buying some really amazing way of saying a thing about their business so that they can, that's not the point here. The point is almost entirely, especially for most people who do what I do, right? SEO. The point is almost entirely for one reason, and that's higher rankings on Google. So, in a sense, it is like the same thing as a backlink, right? Local SEO is to reviews as backlinks is to Google search results, right? They're huge, they're a big piece of it, and apparently easy to gain. So, I know there's some people who are buying positive reviews because they have a bunch of negative reviews and they're doing that for like a reputation management kind of thing. That's, I think, a different story. I think for the most part, what I'm talking about is people using purchasing of reviews to rank higher in Google, right? So, like I said before, I kind of brought this out, right? Um, what's the fear? The fear is that, well, let me start with this. What's the fear of buying reviews right now? Right? I'd say the first and most prominent is that you're going to lose your business listing, right? I think for most people, that's the fear, right? The fear of some negative consequence that comes from purchasing fake reviews, right? So, what happens when your competitor starts buying positive reviews and then also starts buying negative reviews aimed at you? I think that then takes us to the next fear, which I think is the ultimate fear based in all of what's going on when we worry about reviews. And that's that Google isn't going to do anything to help you if you're in a situation where your competitor is buying reviews or someone like your competitor is buying negative reviews, directing them at you. So, really, the crux of what I think my argument or my worry here is with all this review stuff is that I think in every SEO's mind and in every business owner's mind, if they're not just blocking it entirely, the worry is that if something happens and there's some kind of imbalance in the system that is my local business market, Google doesn't care and they're not going to do anything. And I think this is backed up by a lot of anecdotal stories about people on Reddit whose competitors were buying reviews, positive reviews for themselves or negative reviews against them, and they couldn't get anything done, or it didn't ever get solved, or it took a long time to solve. That would be great if it just took a while to solve. That's better than not getting it solved. But I think a lot of people are worried about that there just isn't really any care in the local space with Google and with these negative reviews, right? So it's just like, hopefully it doesn't come around to me. I hope that Google, I hope that gun doesn't get pointed at me, right? And the way I've been thinking about this is, but the bullet's your competitor. The gun is Google. Google's own gun is getting used, pointed at your face, and they're not going to do anything for you, right? Like the gun is the local business, your local business on maps, right? So once again, I worry that this starts to go down that same path that some people start to buy. And this has been going on for a while, but some people say, backlinks are bad. The black hats start buying them. The black hats start getting ahead. The rest follow, right? So that brings me to the FTC and their whole thing last year in August. So the FTC last year came out with a bunch of rulings that basically laid out that fake reviews bad, don't make fake reviews, And it seemed like this kind of got pointed at some companies that were using AI to generate thousands and thousands of reviews. So, as per the usual, right, when there's a ruling, and I don't know if I expect a ruling like this to get down so granular, but only the people who are making 1 billion or more fake reviews are the ones that get targeted, right? Like one isn't going to get me targeted. 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, like, you know, that line starts to get bigger and bigger before anyone does anything, and more towards, yeah. So I think that isn't really very surprising, right? But that's kind of how it goes. So, um, what really then though hits for me is that every SEO and every local business on the planet is in violation of this FTC ruling. And here's why. Basically, in this FTC ruling, every review, if it's a family member, nope, it has to be completely disclosed. If it's a friend, nope, it should be completely disclosed. If it's an employee or an officer or a manager at the business or the owner or anyone in any connection to them, it needs to be disclosed. And so, right, so I think as SEOs, a lot of us are looking out at this guy saying he's buying reviews. You're bad, right? But then when we get a customer or we start a business, we ask our family and our friends and anyone we can to go write us reviews. And I don't know, like, is it a gray area? Yeah, I feel like it's gray. I mean, is there, you know, I mean, is there a reason why the first 10 reviews on every business profile is somebody with the same last name? Like, duh, right? We can't kind of all expect that, I think, at some level, right? But that being, that's gray. So based on that, everyone's in the gray. All of us are in the gray. It's just gray and grayer, right? Like where do you draw the line? Well, I draw it here, where I think there's this moral line of I shouldn't buy a link, but I can ask for it from, just because, my family did a better job at breeding and I've got, 30 to 50 family members out there. And well, you're an only child in a broken marriage. Sorry for you, right? Like you only have like 3 friends. Like it's a popularity contest at that point. So uh, it's just like, where does your gray? Right? Where's your gray? And sometimes I don't like saying this. I can be a little bit of a moralist, I guess I would say. And I understand the side, like I want to be moral about things, but I do understand the perspective that some people have, that it's like it's just all about the client and doing what's best for my client. So once again, this is that gear in motion, right? The black hat, the guy at the end of the road that says, "Hey, I'm good with it. I'm going to buy these fake reviews." Right? He starts winning. People got to catch up. People got to compete. Eventually, it becomes pretty standard. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think that it's important to acknowledge that. So so I think, yeah. So look, I find that interesting because I think a lot of us have done that where we've had family members and friends buy back or give us reviews, right? And if that's against FTC, right, then well, we're all kind of against the FTC, right? So we're all manipulating, and I think that's a good word for all this is manipulation, right? because I think buying reviews is like the top of the manipulation, right? And as far as manipulation goes, it's manipulation, but there's a moral line there, right? Um, and a legal line, right? If I'm, being perfectly honest there, but there then is just manipulation, right? Which is the entirety of what an SEO does, right? So there's the very far this way where nothing is manipulated at all, right? Everything is completely organic. You don't even ask your clients to give you a review, right? The people who do, they just do it because they feel like they're motivated by their nature to go do that. And then there's like asking for reviews. Then there's like asking for reviews with keywords. Hey, right? If you do this, if you do this, then there's like responding to reviews quickly, right? Then there's like responding to reviews and getting reviews with keywords in them, right? So like it's all manipulation, right? Like, and once again, there's the bad and good. Is it bad? Is it good? It doesn't matter. But it is manipulation, right? It's manipulating things around the Google algorithm to try to get higher up when it comes to the map and where you rank, right? So it becomes these check boxes of do this, do this, do this, and you win, right? So now, then it comes down to, okay, well, then can you remove them? Can you separate the review from the number? Is it a review and a backlink, right? Like I don't know, but I think that just the same as backlinks, it's interesting, right? Because you have the guy who's out there buying expired domains and putting AI spun content on the domains to point them to his money site. Then you have the guy out there that's getting guest posts, right? And he's doing them with do follow links, not no follow links. And then you have the guy who's writing a lot and he doesn't, believe in building backlinks. They come naturally, right? And it's just, right? It's that interesting, like, what are the guidelines? What is the reality of what's happening? And what's the guidelines and where does that fit? Right. So, I mean, I want to say this too. Like, if I go and have a 5-minute meeting with all of the guys in India that are going to give me a backlink, and I tell them, you're not going to necessarily give me a backlink, but I want you to have an interaction with my business. Then I hope you give me a backlink, right? I know there's an incentive there, there's a payment, whatever. I get that. But once again, if I'm going by Google, then is that better? Now they've had a touch with my business, right? So that's Google's guideline, is that they just should have a touch with your business. So it just brings all these interesting ways of kind of folding things up, right? Um, so now I want to talk about negative SEO because I think it's a really good comparison for where we kind of are in the reviews, right? Like when before Penguin, which maybe people know, maybe don't know, before Penguin update, Penguin is a big update a while back, a decade or something like that ago, where Google changed the algorithm, right? And people were building hundreds, thousands of backlinks, and then Penguin introduced quality, right? So basically 1,000 crappy backlinks didn't matter, right? And could hurt you. And one or two really good backlinks, so it gave you that quality, so that just quantity wasn't, everybody was going for quantity. And that kind of made a quality a piece of it. Penguin did. So that's kind of where, so then that brought negative SEO out though, because now if having a lot of crappy backlinks is bad, then what people start doing, right? Or the morally ambiguous of us start doing is building the crappy backlinks to the competitors' sites so that they drop in rankings. And this tends to happen anytime Google says this good, this bad. The bad thing then can be put on, right, the competitor, right? And so even if they started to say, hey, getting fake reviews is bad, right, is a bad thing, then people could just buy fake reviews for their competitors, right? So it's not as easy as just saying, hey, why don't you just make buying links or buying reviews bad, right? So I don't think that's necessarily the solution to the problem, or just maybe poses another angle here that can be worrisome, right? And I think there's also one other part of this I want to mention, and that's the blackmail, right? So there's businesses out there who are getting hit with with negative reviews, fake negative reviews, and companies are coming after them and saying, pay us or we won't take them down. And in fact, that is one of the reasons I don't ever want to buy fake reviews, if I'm being honest. It's partially because of all this, moral and gray. I don't think it's a good idea. I'd like it to go away. I'd like it not to play into the system, right? But I'm almost afraid that if I stop paying the guy that I'm paying for these reviews, what's to stop him from just going in and changing them all to negative? Right? I'm afraid already enough when somebody that I'm somewhat connected to writes a review. What if they decide they don't like me anymore and they decide they're going to go and change the review to negative, right? That already worries me. Now I got an army of them. So that's my worry. But I do think, on the other hand, this situation, the scenario we're in, makes it easy for that kind of a blackmail. And it seems like most people get their stuff back, but these aren't 100% failure rate, right? There's obviously this blackmail is out there and it works at some level. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it. I don't know how much it even happens, but I do think that that's like this, the two edge, the sharp edge of the sword or whatever, it cuts both ways, right? I worry about that. So that just kind of brings me up to my thoughts here on reviews and the review system that we kind of have right now on Google, and maybe a justification in my own mind of why I don't want to buy reviews and I want to avoid that game as much as I possibly can, right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to get involved with that. So how does this get solved? What is the solution? I'm not coming here to give some kind of great solution here. you know, uh, do we want a system free of completely of manipulation? You know, should it be organic? You know, should reviewers have weight to them? I think that causes a new set of issues. If somebody with a lot of reviews has weight, now that causes some more issues. You know, I mean, you know, fake accounts, spam accounts, should there be some weight there that certain reviews could be removed from the algorithm? I don't know. It's it blows my mind that for the most part, with most accounts, Google doesn't have some level of understanding of whether the person is real or not. That blows my mind. There is no way, right? Am I wrong? Is this a South Park government scenario where I think the government is all knowing and knows way more, but really they're just trying to make themselves look that way. Is that what this is? Does Google actually have way less data, way less information, way less understanding? Are they actually lost in the, you know, in the spheres of data that they don't know if people are likely to be real or not? That they don't know if this account is likely to be matching up with a real US citizen who goes to the, grocery store and goes to work and comes home versus somebody who, according to the data, is on one IP address all the time, every time, doesn't move, goes to one location and pops up. It's just, it's crazy to me. I feel like it shouldn't be that hard to like weed out what's fake, but I think that really brings me to Google Maps and Google Business in general, right? In this I think is a problem for me, and I think it's a problem, but I don't know that it's a problem for Google, which so I think Google Maps itself seems to be uncared for, right? I think we have this place where, in my mind, it's filled with the middle class backbone business owners, salt of the earth people of our country, right? And it's been slowly outsourced to autoresponders and people outside of the country with a very much, please don't bother us. We don't want to give you any of our time kind of attitude, right? Whether it's that there's no money in it, I don't know why they don't just offer some kind of support that you can pay for. I don't know how much, maybe that doesn't drive enough revenue in their math or something, but I don't understand why every business wouldn't pay them 5, 10, $20 a month, to be able to get on phone support once every 10 years when their algorithm decides they're not a real business again, right? So that I don't understand, right? So to me, when I hear a story about a local business owner, right, who shouldn't have to be a Google business profile expert, who shouldn't have to know what schema is in order to run his brick and mortar carpet cleaning business or whatever, right? Like I these stories drive me nuts because they drive me nuts from me. I've been playing computer games since I was 5 years old. I was installing and fixing my own computer programs that were breaking down that no one could help me with that. I was doing that when I was 7 years old because if Command and Conquer Red Alert went off and stopped working, I had to figure out how to fix that. Otherwise, I couldn't play it. I was very motivated, right? It's hard for me. This whole thing is difficult for me to wrap my head around, and I would consider myself pretty good at this stuff. So some guy who's made it his life's mission to clean the shiz out of people's carpets, he's got to be a freaking computer genius as well. Otherwise, Google's going to just remove him. That is bonkers. It really is. And so when I hear stories of somebody getting flagged and then trying to get his documentation that he sends it in a second time, he's denied again, right? It's been now 2 months since he's been on Google, his entire business has dried up, and people will say, oh, well, you didn't have a good enough brand. So yeah, maybe he's getting a couple people right or whatever, but like, let's not act like 90% of business is flowing through your Google business profile, especially if you're a startup. So what does that matter? Like, why do we have to put like, oh, you should have's on this? Who cares? This shouldn't happen if they're legit, right? So now the guy had to get a HELOC to freaking pay his employees. He's in debt. He almost has 2 strokes from this crap, right? He's now in crippling debt just before the guy didn't know. Then now that he has to go to the Google support forums and request that an expert there, who's some unpaid expert that's just out of the goodness of their heart helping people here, right? They're now going to help him get it up to the right person who could then go click the red button to green so that he can have his business back. You know, I do I make the joke here, you know, the Brian Regan, I always loved that joke about turning on your phone or your internet. Like, can you see the switch from where you're at? Can I come down and flip it? Right? Like, there's just a switch, right? So I think this is toxic, and I use that word purposefully because I think that word defines the system that's been created for business owners, which is, we want you to quit, we want you to give up, and please F off, leave us alone. We don't want to deal with you. Right? Like, it's funny to me that I think business owners think that their foundation of their business online is concrete, and then in 1 second they can realize they're living in a glass house, right? Like, you realize, like, all this stuff around me, all my reviews, tomorrow something could happen and all of my reviews are gone, right? You get up to 600, 1,000 reviews, and at any minute those could just be lost. I have to worry about that. That's heavy. I think that's heavy. You know? So that brings me back to this buying reviews thing, right? Like, who is winning on Google are the people who are trying to game the system, oftentimes. Not necessarily, but people who game the system can win, and because everything on here is glass, they're at least treating it like it is. They're at least expressing to the companies they work with, hey, like, this could go away. You know, so what we are going to do is we're going to start 5 of these. We're going to make sure we have a backup one. We're going to make sure we can get you reviews. Like, at some level, part of what is happening is a response to this, right? In a way, because it's like, what if my business goes down tomorrow and I need to get, like, all my reviews are gone? Like, is it like I had 700 reviews? I want 700 reviews again. Like, whatever. I don't think I'm not trying to condone it, but at the same time, I do think that if it's a game, then sometimes the person who's the furthest down the line and the least I guess brainwashed, the one who can say this is all an illusion, I'm just going to treat it as the illusion that it is, sometimes that's the person that wins, right? And everybody else is kind of caught in the illusion, and they don't want it to be an illusion. I want this to be real. So that's my take here. lastly, my kind of thought was just, we all thought that Twitter, whatever you think about Twitter now or whatever, I don't care. But I remember when the conversation was Twitter is a public utility and it's the last bastion of American freedom, right? And it's funny to me because now thinking about that, we think Twitter is the backbone. Look at Google Business. And to me, it's bulk buy toilet paper that's holding up the entire local business structure under our feet, right? So that's that's my that's my little rant here about Google Business. I want it to be about the people. I hope at some point it can be. I hope that there can be some kind of incentive structure here or that Google can find so that local businesses can be cared for. Is it awful? I don't know. Is it holding up? Yeah. But to me it's like the same thing as like going to jail for the wrong reason. It's like to lose your business for one person to lose their business for the wrong reason and go out of business because of the wrong reasons. That's like too much to me. That's too much. That's too many people lost. Losing it to competition, people doing better, I get that. But losing your business on a technicality to me is similar to going to jail for something you didn't do. Okay, so let me get to the overall point of all this. I know I have a lot of points, a lot of things to say. I got a lot of thoughts on this, but let me just get to the overall point that I want to make in all this. And that is if Google cared enough or was incentivized enough or whatever to care about local businesses in the form of support and ways to contact Google and to get information and an exchange of information, none of this fake reviews conversation would even matter, right? If a local business owner could call up Google and say, hey, I'm getting negative review bombed. I've got 20 negative 1-star reviews. I think they're all coming from a competitor who's buying some kind of negative review service on me. Okay, we'll look into it for you and we'll get back to you. Okay, they look at the problem, they solve it. Or, hey, I think this, there's new business just popped up. It's looking real fishy. They're getting a ton of reviews. They don't look legitimate, right? Oh, okay, yeah, we'll go look into it. Okay, they go look into it. Whether they're, then they can get rid of it or they can keep it if it's legit, right? Like, okay, right? Hey, I'm getting a ton of positive reviews that they're not from my customers. I want a level playing field. Okay, yeah, we'll go look into that for me. Like, I think the general idea here, right, being that if people could contact Google, and these are the stories, once again, you see somebody dealing with getting negative review bombed, or someone with a competitor that looks like they have a ton of fake reviews. That information is not getting to Google, nor do they seem to care about it. But that's the solution to this whole thing is just some communication. You got other people, you have these free Google experts on there, you're not paying any money to over here. Well, you have all these business people over here who are willing to give you information about the local business scene and what's going on for free. Their information, their loads and loads of information about their local business, right? They want to communicate with you. They're sending you this information about what's going on, right? Their fears, their worries, they and things actively bad actors in the space doing these kind of things, right? They're out there. They just want that, right? They want that communication. They want that ability to be able to get real responses that get looked at and that get where action can be taken. So I I think that's the solution, right? Like there's people out there that have this information they want to give it to you. So therein lies the solution. Better customer service or customers being served, right? That solves so many of these problems and it solves this core problem. But the more I think people go through these tough things, the more they feel like they, you know, I think the more and the more that things like buying reviews works and that word gets out, the more it becomes a problem, right? The more it becomes ingrained in the system and eventually just becomes a part of the game itself, right? So that I think is the primary solution here is supporting the local business owner. So if you have thoughts on this, I'd love to hear them. If you're an expert on this subject, if somebody out there can help me better understand what's going on here, I'd love to hear it. Feel free to reach out to me, Josh at brightbeamseo.com. I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts on this. And I just want to end with that. I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to my anecdotes for Google business profiles. I don't know the solutions here. I'm not trying to offer those solutions. These are just kind of my thoughts. And I am definitely not trying to give anybody any advice or any reason to buy fake reviews. I will forever always consider that like not a good thing, right? I don't want to do it. And I hope that came out clearly in this. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.